This project is to create a guess my number game. So in this case, we're going to have the computer choose a number. So for example, the computer could choose a number between negative 50 and 50. So let's say they choose 3. Then it's the user's job to try and guess this number. So they'll type in a number and the computer will say either yes or no, you've got it, and my number is higher or lower than the number you guessed. So to start, we need to define our variables. For sure, we need to have a variable that defines the computer's guess, or the computer's number. We need a variable that talks about the player's guess, and we need some sort of variable that's going to total up the number of tries the player has had. Once we define these 3 variables and we create them in Scratch, then we need to prompt our user to guess. So they could have a total of 5 guesses, or they could get it before 5, so this part becomes tricky. The third thing we need to do is add their guesses to a list so that they can see their running guesses and see if their guess is higher or lower than the computer's guess. So our fourth thing is we're going to have 3 cases in this program. Either the player's guess will be equal to the computer's number, the player's guess will be less than the computer's number, or the player's guess will be greater than the computer's number. Alright, so as we said, our first step is to create our variables. So our first variable we call the computer's number, or computer's guess. We need a variable that talks about the counter, so it totals the number of guesses. And we need a variable that is called, we'll call it the player's guess. In this project as well, we'll probably want to hide all of these except the counter. The counter will be important for them to be able to tell how many guesses they've taken. Then also down here at Make a List, it's nice if we create a list that's maybe called My Guess. So this will total up how many are the number of guesses that the players had and what number specifically it was. So now that we've got our variables, our next step is we need to set our variables at the very start. So I'm going to set the computer's number to choose a number randomly between negative 50 and 50. Then from here we can go a couple different ways. We can probably introduce them somehow and explain to them what the project's going to do. So let's put in here explanation. And then what we want to ask is we want to prompt our user to take their first guess. So what is your first guess will be our first question. Then with that, we're going to want to define their guess, the player's guess, to the answer they type in. Whatever they type in, we're also going to add that answer to my guess, so it will list over here. So now our next goal is we have our 3 cases. So again, we can do this in a couple different ways. I'm going to put in just 3 if statements. So we have if our player guess is equal to the computer's number, something will happen. In our next spot, we have if our player's guess is less than the computer's number, and we have one of greater than. We have 3 cases here. So if it's equal, if they're equal, then we want to say correct, you win. And that finishes it here. That's kind of the easy part. But then as we jump down to part 2, if the player's guess is less than the computer's number, and here we want to say incorrect, your guess isn't right, we want to be able to add into the guesses that the guess is too low, and here will be the guess is too high. So the one last trick is we want this piece to repeat most likely less than 5 times. 5 is as many times as it would go. But if the player guesses the number in 2 tries, then the program should stop. So that will be the final challenge of this piece. All right, good luck.